Campaign 2016, Democrat Hillary Clinton is trying to put more pressure on Republican rival Donald Trump. Today, she released her latest tax return, something Trump has refused to do until after the elections. KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with more on Clinton's challenge to Trump and his latest string of controversy. It's been quite a week, Dave.
Oh, you bet. And we'll talk about the taxes in just a moment, but there were more charges and more controversy today as well. Tonight, Donald Trump tries to put out one fire while he may be lighting the next one. His poll numbers are tanking in some key battleground states, and Hillary Clinton, as Susie said, releases her tax returns and wonders why Trump hasn't released his. But we start tonight with a Republican unity show in Altoona.
Who here wants to listen to the next president of the United States, Donald Trump?
With the help of RNC Chairman Reince Priebus, with whom he was reported to be on bad terms, Donald Trump was the picture of party unity at rallies in Pennsylvania, where the two men embraced on stage, and Priebus shot down the reports of heated differences.
And don't believe the garbage you read. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump, the Republican Party, all of you, we're going to put him in the White House and save this country together.
But Trump had barely put out the last fire he started with incendiary comments when a new one was breaking out over his claim that the only way Hillary Clinton could win Pennsylvania, where she currently leads in the polls by double digits, would be by hook or by crook. And he made it clear he wasn't being sarcastic.
We're not going to lose. The only way we can lose, in my opinion, I really mean this, Pennsylvania, is if cheating goes on. I really believe it.
That comes after days of controversy when Trump continued to repeat this charge with a serious tone and a straight face.
I call President Obama and Hillary Clinton the founders of ISIS.
But on Friday, he blamed one of his favorite targets, the news media.
Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Then, but not that sarcastic, to be honest with you. But now they're analyzing. These people are the lowest form of life.
Trump surrogate Newt Gingrich says Trump has to clean up his ambiguous statements.
I know what Trump has in his mind, but that's not what people hear. And I think he has got to learn to use language that has been thought through and that is clear to everybody.
And new polls in several swing states show Trump's communication problems are taking a toll, since he's trailing by 9 points or more in Colorado, North Carolina, and Virginia, and by 5 points now in Florida. And on the national map, with Trump leading states in red and Clinton leading in blue states, CBS News Director of Elections Anthony Salvanto says Trump has a hard road to catch up.
If you look at the polling leads that Hillary Clinton now has, even in just some of these states, and we'll light them up here in blue to show you, she would today have enough electoral votes across those states to get over the 270 that she needs to get elected.
Now Hillary Clinton is piling on, turning up the heat on Trump to release his tax returns by releasing hers. Hillary and Bill Clinton, filing jointly, made more than $10.7 million in 2015, most of it in speaking fees, over $5 million for him, nearly $1.5 million for her. She also made $3 million from her book Hard Choices. Their federal tax rate was about 34%. They gave more than $1 million to charity, almost all of it to the Clinton Family Foundation, which is not the same as the controversial Clinton Foundation. And this week she took aim at Trump for not releasing his tax returns.
Because he refuses to do what every other presidential candidate in decades has done and release his tax returns.
At a Trump rally in Erie, Pennsylvania, protesters held up tax form papers and disrupted the event before being guided out by police. And the Clinton campaign released a video of his fellow Republicans calling on Trump to make his tax returns public.
He doesn't want to do it because presumably there's something in there that is bad.
Trump told Fox News on Thursday he's not releasing his returns until an IRS audit is complete.
Well, look, I'm in a routine audit. You know, when you're under a routine audit, you don't give your tax return.
Well, clearly this was another tough week for Donald Trump, and those bad weeks are starting to pile up. But on Monday, Trump is hoping to turn things around during a stop in Ohio, where he's scheduled to deliver a major foreign policy address. Susie.
Well, Dave, political experts are questioning not only how, things are going, the Trump controversial statements, but also how the campaign is actually being run on Trump's side.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions about that. One of the issues is the states where Trump is campaigning. Like today, for example, he barnstormed across Pennsylvania, a state that has voted for Democrats in the last 6 presidential elections, and a state where he's trailing badly in the polls. This weekend, he'll be spending some time campaigning in Connecticut, which hasn't voted for a Republican presidential candidate since 1988. It's not that a candidate shouldn't break out of the mold and take a swing at some tough states, but when the polls show you're in trouble in rock-solid GOP states like Georgia and Utah and trailing by a widening margin in some must-win battleground states, is that really the best use of his time, energy, and resources, Susie?